Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roxanne Pereira, and today we recognize that our work at AMANS and the work of our members takes place in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognize and respect the history, the language, and the culture of the Mi'kmaq and all Indigenous people whose presence continues to enrich our communities. As treaty people, we're inspired and committed to improving the lives of everyone who reside here through the work we do together. We would also like to recognize that Nova Scotia is home to over 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose culture and heritage and histories have been and remain a key part of this province for more than 400 years. And we honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of African descent who came before us to this land. Thank you for those of you who have signed up and registered for our Lunch and Learn. Our Lunch and Learn is funded by the Accessibility Directorate. And today we are going to be discussing about any upcoming grants that are coming up. So we have Amelia Edwards as well as Paul Tingley here to present. Amelia Edwards is a coordinator for the Disability Partnership and is a passionate advocate, dedicated mom, dog mom, an elder millennial and retired emo kid, holding a Bachelor of Arts with a high honors in Women's and Gender Studies from the Carleton University. Her academic focus include critical race, disability, and sexuality studies. Amelia identifies as a female, is a proud member of the LGBTQIAS plus community and consistently promotes intersectionality in her work and personal life. She brings a personal experience with the foster care system, domestic violence, mental health, and traumatic brain injury to her advocacy. Paul Tingley works at Community Culture, Tourism, and Heritage as a program officer for accessibility and infrastructure for the last 2 years. Before that, he was a para sport coordinator for the Sport Nova Scotia for 5 years. Paul has taken the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility course and enjoys assisting Nova Scotia businesses and communities to become more accessible. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Amelia. She'll be doing her presentation, and then Paul will be doing his presentation, and then we're going to leave some time for questions. Thanks, Amelia.
Good morning, everybody. Hi. Thank you, Roxanne, so much for having me. I guess I'll give a brief introduction about what the Disability Partnership is, because I assume some folks may or may not know. The partnership is a network or a professional association of nonprofit organizations that directly provide program supports or services to persons with disabilities across Nova Scotia. We came into being officially. We got some grant funding in 2023. I've been here since October, and I'm moving into, my second year and expanding that and starting to get some big projects on the go. A few projects that I undertake is really connecting communities, municipalities, governments with those nonprofits, with those folks on the ground, and ensuring that persons with disabilities are amplified within the work that we do in our organizations, in our communities, our businesses, and all of those good things. I work very closely with a lot of nonprofits who have cool initiatives like ILNS, for example, Independent Living Nova Scotia, Summer Street Industries up in Pictou County. I'm working on CBRM. They're a little harder to reach. I see a puppy, Rosella. But yeah, so today I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about how I can support your work through connecting you with nonprofits and providing you with information around, like Roxanne said, grants or scholarships or anything like that. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Nova Scotia League for Equal Opportunities. I'm not sure if folks have heard of that organization, but they've been around a long time and they have a lot of great initiatives that I just wanted to highlight today. And I'm going to pop a couple things in the chat and share my screen if that's all right. So please give me a few moments while I navigate technology. Let's see. Right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. And so I'm going to pop the link in the chat for Access Awareness Week. So nationally, Canada, the provinces, we highlight access awareness within our country between the end of May to the very beginning of June. So May, I believe this is from last year's, but this is kind of those last few days in May and June. And NS Leo really champions any events that are going on within Nova Scotia during Access Awareness Week. This year, just going to review my notes here. I believe it's the 25th to the 31st. And our theme is civic engagement, I believe, for persons with disabilities. So there are a few, Nova Scotia LEGO runs a few different committees. So they have a PANS committee, so that's the Provincial Access Awareness committee, and then there are subcommittees based on that, and that includes municipal task-based committees as well as communications, events planning, and all of that stuff that goes on. The next one I'm going to flip over to is an awards part of the Access Awareness Week. So the Mel Heb Awards, they have been going on for probably 20 years, and they are community-based awards. And there is a list of, let's look here, probably 6 awards. So we have the Community Action Award for communities that are dedicated to increasing opportunities for folks with disabilities. An Exceptional Service Award, which recognizes an organization or a member of an organization. The Encore Award, which recognizes a person with a disability who has significantly contributed to their community. The Access Award, so that's for an individual, a business, or a group that doesn't have a mandate to serve persons with disabilities that has worked to improve access to facilities or services. The Andre McConnell Award, I'm just going to copy this link and pop it in the chat. The Andre McConnell Award, this is for individuals or municipalities who've gone above and beyond their mandate as a provincial employee or a public servant. And then the Youth Champion Award, of course, recognizing a young person up to 18 who has a disability and has significantly contributed to raising awareness of disability issues within the province. You can nominate folks, I believe, what does it say, up until March 21st. And so you would just select one of these nomination forms for each award. And then the Mel Heb Awards, they're usually in the middle of the week for Access Awareness Week, so probably on a Wednesday. And they span the province. So they're not just here in HRM, but every municipality, wherever there's a recipient, has an opportunity to host an awards ceremony along with a flag raising or any sort of event that you would like to do for that particular week. And then I'm going to pop our scholarships from NS Leo, they're not mine, but the scholarships from NS Leo into the chat as well. I had the privilege of attending the scholarship luncheon last year. It was hosted here in Halifax, and folks traveled from the Valley, from I think almost to Digby County to receive their scholarships, all young people moving into post-secondary education, which was great. So the academic year scholarships are open now, and there's a few conditions and criteria. So folks need to be a person with a permanent disability, a permanent resident of Nova Scotia, be entering or continuing their studies at the undergraduate level in a university or college. And then obviously the conflict of interest, not be involved in the selection process or have a close family member be involved in that. And some things that folks would have to submit is regarding their community involvement, their extracurriculars, their approaches, their academic performance, and their educational goals and directions as well. And the deadline for this is in March as well, I believe the 28th. And this is another thing that can be just applied for directly. And you can apply, you can submit for the awards, you can submit as many nominations as you'd like. And for the application form, you can send that out to as many folks, businesses, students, family members, regional centers of education as you possibly can. And I will mention around the scholarships, I've been working very closely with the Department of, I can never get the acronym right, EECD, so Early Education and Early Child Development, to gather scholarships from the disability community, from our partnership members, so that they are in one place and we can kind of send those out to other folks who can then share them to get more, what we're hearing is students are saying, we don't have any scholarships. We don't have access to the scholarships. And then sometimes not-for-profits are saying, nobody's applying for our scholarships. So that's kind of where I'm standing and filling in that gap to make sure folks are getting connected with the things that they need. And I talked really fast. So Roxanne, I'm not sure if there's anything I missed or if you'd like to open time for questions now. Well, if it's fresh in folks' minds.
Thank you so much, Amelia. I really appreciate it because there are so many awards and scholarships just sprinkled all across Nova Scotia. So it's really nice to just have a space where you can showcase the work NSLEO is doing as well. So thank you for that. Amelia is also another great resource because she's connected to a lot of organizations based here in Nova Scotia, she mentioned. So I know folks who are currently doing their accessibility plans. We can definitely try to connect with Amelia to try to connect you with organizations because they are also a great resource, especially when you're engaging with the public or also trying to find more information about the accessibility pieces within your plans. I'll just open it up right now. Does anybody have any questions for Amelia before we get into Paul's grants that he's going to be discussing?
I can give a couple of questions. I made a connection with Steph Kylehack, who works in Cumberland County. And we have been kind of connecting and brainstorming about what Access Awareness Week would look like in Cumberland County and recognizing Steph takes a very we need to meet folks where they're at type approach and recognizing that that's a very blue collar region. And so how do we incorporate these folks into accessibility work without making it without turning it into something that is exclusionary in and of itself. So a lot of times we are not using plain language or we're using our jargon. How do we meet farmers, industry folks, where they're at and talk about accessibility, talk about disability and diversity in a way that makes sense? And then also celebrating, there's probably tons of folks who in the communities in Cumberland who just accommodate things because maybe their child has a disability and they work on the farm. So how do we celebrate those folks? So Steph and I are working closely on that. And so that's another way that you can use me as well. If you think of something, you can run it past me and I'm happy to support.
Great. Thank you, Amelia. Maybe someone will have some questions towards the end of the lunch and learn, so you can let the information rest for some time. So we have Paul Tingley up next. Paul, are you able to access? I know you were in and out of the Zoom accounts, but can you
Yeah.
hear us? Yeah. Okay, great.
So I will share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I would ask, can you see the PowerPoint here on my screen?
Not yet. It's still loading, I think.
Okay.
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, I work with the Community Cultures, Tourism, and Heritage, and I'm involved with community and business accessibility funding. So every year for the last 7 years at least, we've been giving $1 million out to community and $1 million out to business. and we have a deadline coming up, February 14th. So it's getting a little late, but still not impossible to apply for this year. And today I'm just going to go over kind of the broad strokes of the eligibility, the process, what some of the barriers are, just kind of some themes that popped up. And we'll take questions anytime you like. And yeah, we'll go from there. So this is my email, and I'm doing the community, and we'll talk about that. I also have, we also have the business accessibility program, and Kayla Arsenal, she's running that as the program officer, and she's on the call today, so she's looking. So she'll tell me if I get anything wrong. But if you want to find the grants, maybe Kayla can drop that in the chat of the business and the community. So we have landing pages with the application form and the guidelines, and it's kind of all in there. But that's kind of half the battle, is finding the fund. So we are driven by the commitment of the province of Nova Scotia to be more accessible. There's the 2030. There's also governmental commitments that we've made. We do, it evolves every year based on things that are happening, I guess, and availability of contractors and things like that. So we're always tweaking our guidelines, but really, I guess the eligibility, these are the broad strokes. So it's 2/3 of the expense to make an accessibility improvement up to $50,000 will be covered by the province. Now, that's only if you're awarded, if you're chosen to be funded. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at it, but it's a very high demand program on the community side. So last year, we had $3 million in asks, and we only were able to give out $1 million. So there were a lot of good projects that didn't get funded, unfortunately. On the business side, it's more equal. So businesses have a good opportunity to apply. At least last year, almost every business that applied and that was eligible with a good project got their money. So eligible organizations, eligible projects. Eligible projects, really, there's so much to accessibility, as you all know. It depends who you're talking to, what accessibility means to different people. So we call it accessibility improvements, and we take all these applications, and they go in and they are scored based on like what the barriers are, what the needs are, what their capability is to do the project. So we kind of have a panel, and it's based on a rubric of scoring, and we'll go through that process in just a little bit. So the business is quite simple. You're for profit, you're in the registry of joint stock, you're eligible. If you're not a federally owned business, you're in Nova Scotia doing business, then that's the business side, you're eligible. On the community side, it's much more diverse. So you can see the big long list here is really including so many different community organizations, and the municipalities, towns, and villages, third from the bottom, might be a lot more of what's represented here. So those are more prescribed public service bodies, and they're very sophisticated, great. They do have committees, and they're looking at the barriers, and they know what they want, and fantastic applications. And then we have more smaller, community halls, and they have just a great need for this accessibility. It's not as sophisticated applications and things like that, but we take all these things, and if they're good applications, they're going to go in and get good scoring. So there's a lot in here, and sorry for all the words, but basically, we want to hear from the people that are interested in doing accessibility improvements. If there's any question about, like, is this even eligible? Am I eligible? Please call, and we'll talk that out. So historically, I guess, majority of applicants have always been through the built environment, and it's all physical upgrades. It's ramps, doors, and washrooms, 85% or more kind of thing. And it's great. There's a big need, and it really allows people to show up and get into buildings. It's more emphasis on the wheelchair, I would say, and I think that's more of what people see and what they know. It's what I call their disability IQ. It's kind of like the general public is looking and saying wheelchairs can't get there, but there's so many more barriers and different types of disabilities. So I kind of collected all the different projects in the last 3 years kind of thing, and you can kind of see the wide variety of different barriers out there. So a lot of them are physical, but there's also sensory, and then there's developmental. There's things based on arts and playgrounds, beaches, evacuation chairs. So that's why really it's in the guidelines, we can't name everything. We just really want people to call us and kind of discuss what they're thinking before they go into doing all the work to do the application. So once again, I apologize. That's my ugly slide. It doesn't get any worse than that. So, and then, so if we've gotten to this point where you're eligible organization and you got an eligible project, which is an accessibility improvement, then you kind of got the green light to go for it. And you might want to know about what the timeline is, because people want to get to work right away. So here it is, like third line down, we're basically at the deadline stage coming up is the next big milestone. So we'll get in all those applicants, and then it takes some time for the panel to go through all the scoring. It's 12 weeks is 3 months, so that's like mid-May. If you are successful at that point or unsuccessful, you'll get a letter. And then if you get this successful letter, there'll be a terms and conditions that you sign to, saying that you have to pay or you have to cover your 1/3, and that you'll do it in a timely manner, hopefully in the fiscal year, those kind of things. And after you sign and return that, then we should, if there's no problems with past outstanding projects overdue, all these kind of little nuances, if there's no provincial vote in progress or anything, like, then it should be a week or two. You get your money, and that would be in June approximately. And if it's less than 25,000, then you get 100% paid out immediately. If it's more than 25,000, we'll give you 80%. We'll give you the final 20%. And you finish your project and you pass them the final report. We are So that's a lot. I don't know if anyone has any questions there, but if not, that's fine. Then we go into more of what are the projects? What is a quality project? Who's like monitoring all these things? What do I do? Like, this is like, I want to be more like, we get a lot of questions. People are they're struggling to comply, I guess. They want to be more accessible, but they just don't know where to start. They have limited funds. So this is a lot of the discussions that Kayla and I have with the organizations. So at the end of the day, like usually with the physical environment, these are the building code, and the Canadian Standards Association is a great resource. People are looking for guidance to become more knowledgeable. The Nova Scotia Building Code is really, it's in the bottom left there. It's 3.8 in accessibility. So it's kind of like 3/4 of the way down the page, and it's all words. And this is really our end all be all kind of requirement, but it doesn't lend itself to educating or letting people kind of read through it very well. So the Canadian Standards Association shows pictures, and you can kind of jump to different sections. And I find that people respond a lot better to that. And it's still both, they're still both very, very good at improving accessibility. So one of the things I would say is when people call it, they ask about accessibility audits, what to do. Like, is there an audit? And so it depends if you want to pay for it. There's the Rick Hansen Foundation. and they have it's on the guidelines of the application. You can go to the Rick Hansen site with all the certified accessibility auditors, and you can toggle which provinces you want to search. And then, depending on the size of your organization, yeah, you're going to be looking at, probably like, I don't know what the exact price is, but probably minimum $2,000. And then it goes up from there. But I don't want to, I could be wrong. Maybe they've come down, but so that would be like, and you get really good information. So like any like big university with multiple buildings built in another time, another standard, that would be so beneficial to have the accessibility report come back with like it prioritized with costs, suggestions moving forward. You're not going to do everything at once. We want to progress and keep progressing and maybe do it in steps. Without the paying for the Rick Hansen people, I know the Amens is doing their own audit tool, and they did maybe a lunch and learn or a webinar not too long ago, and I think that's a fantastic resource, and it's been catered. It looks like the Rick Hansen, like it's got the same built environment and the SAM lighting, so it really covers all the same things. So I don't know if that's sharing publicly yet or whatnot, but it is. Roxanne is nodding her head. Do you
Yeah,
have any
sorry,
updates?
just to interrupt. Yeah, so we do go to community and we do, Julie does bring her little measuring tape and a couple of clipboards and we go around to infrastructures and we do an audit with them, with the staff. So it's a really nice way to just see what are the possibilities. So we did do it with the town of Oxford with Linda in her theater, her old theater that she has over there. So we did connect her with Paul. Unfortunately, it was a municipality owned building. So she's trying to find different avenues for funding to get it an engineer in and get the work started over there. So we do have a possibility of working with Amans, Julie, and myself to come in to do an audit.
So is that just for municipalities, towns, and villages that would
Yes.
request that for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so like a community hall or a church hall wouldn't be able to get that done.
I would have to touch base with Julie on that. There might be a possibility of us doing that, but I just have to ask her first about that first.
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great though that you would do the towns, villages, municipalities. So yeah, and then the accessibility directorate also had a resource that I think they're kind of waiting for final approval of the new suggested standards to the built environment. So I think it's coming soon, but they had an audit tool that goes through the whole building with the tape measure, and you make your notes, and at the end of the report, you'll have the same information. And then like there's some smaller groups that just kind of take it upon themselves to make accessibility reports. So I think they're all good. Like it gets you talking, it gets you out, it gets you thinking about having a disability and what are the barriers and writing them down. But definitely the Rick Hansen is going to be the top gold standard, I would say, because you're paying and you're going to get good value for that. And then the amens would be right up there too. So moving on. So now we're going to go into considering an accessibility project and you're going to apply. So these are just tips for submitting a strong application. Maybe you're halfway through or whatnot. These are all kind of common sense, but it's good to be reminded. So like I said before, you're going to contact either Kayla or myself, depending on business or community. Am I eligible? Is this a good project? Do you have any advice? Those kind of things. A quick little call can save you a lot of time, I would say. Then we are going to read the program guidelines. So that's on that landing page. And there's lots of information about past projects and maybe some ideas there. Of course, answer all the questions. You want to include your supporting documents. The biggest thing I find, as you all know, the contractors are super busy now. The demand is very high, and it's the more rural you get, I think the harder it is to get people to come out to see your place. So that's really the hardest thing. We used to ask for 3 quotes only 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's okay. We need to have at least 1 quote per project. So it's just changing with the landscape. But that's going to be the hardest to get, I would say. Do all your budget, your project costs. You are responsible for at least 1/3. And in the budget table, there's a confirmed and pending. So we want to hear that if you have confirmed money, we want to hear about that, or if it's pending. So then we want to start early. It's all nice. And then have other people to ping ideas off of. You can, and that's where me and Kayla also can step in. And people have sent in like their draft form of the application, and we can kind of come back and say, maybe you can like minimize this, maximize that. We want to hear more about addressing the barrier, less about the history of this organization. So just kind of bringing it in, and we cannot really do that 2 weeks just before the deadline because we're so busy just kind of like dealing with intake of the applicants. And you're allowed to submit or to do it on time. It's midnight. February 14th is the deadline. You're allowed 1 application per organization. And then that's it. Those are the 2 emails, the generic emails for the community accessibility grants, and then the SB access for the business. So I think that kind of covers it all. I'll stop sharing if anyone has any questions or suggestions.
Thank you so much, Paul. So we're just going to open up for questions for Paul as well as for Amelia. So you can either unmute, ask your question, or you can even add it in the chat.
I must have covered it all. Oh, here we go. If an applicant has a current project underway with funding, but it is not completed, can they submit another grant? Unfortunately not. We like to keep things simple. So you have 1 project, you complete it, you have to finish that before you kind of take on a new one within that program. You can apply to accessibility and have it outstanding or working on it, but you can apply to like a community facilities improvement program. That's allowed, but with the 1 fund, it's only 1 at a time. Because it really is harder than before to get projects done. And really the province wants these things to be done in a timely manner in the fiscal year. And the more that's outstanding, the more contractors being juggled, it really kind of falls apart. It loses that strength. So we want to see 1 at a time and kind of like what you're capable of doing. Thank you for the question. Yeah, and so yeah, we do. I'll just throw out some possible. We do like it can be multi-years. It does if it's like an elevator or something. You could apply for the shaft, elevator shaft 1 year, and then get the elevator car maybe the next year. Those are possibilities. People ask about heritage buildings sometimes about can you like where's the guidance for that? And the Heritage Trust or Heritage Society of Nova Scotia now is like informed on the accessibility issues. There's a lot of maybe fake news about accessibility on heritage buildings and what you can do to the fronts of these buildings and still retain their heritage. So sometimes that's a really gray area. So it is still possible to do those things. And yeah, contrast costs. Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, I see Deborah Ryan said thanks. Deborah, I'm going to boast about the municipality. The county of Annapolis just did a big project and got a playground with all the community to buy in and help out with a lot of in-kind support. And they have a fantastic accessible playground now. Thank you, Deborah. So Jesse's received it in 2024 for a project. Are we able to apply in 2025 for another project? No, we want to see that grant, the money used in 2024, that project, to be complete. So if you can complete it soon, yeah, you can apply for another project in 2025. But if you haven't finished and it's going to extend into the next year, then we're not going to be able to take that application.
I have one more question, Paul. I know AMANS is also available to do the audits as well. But for the Rick Hansen Foundation, you kind of mentioned they are able to do the audits for, I think, around like $2,000. But for the municipalities and villages that don't have the funding for that audit through the Rick Hansen Foundation, is there any grants or supports for them?
Well, you can actually apply money for an accessibility audit. And also there's, but it doesn't score as great as the immediate need to have like a barrier removed, so it's more of a long-term thing. So it's not perfect, but I mean, ideally everyone would have accessibility audits and it would be done by a professional and you could like know, but there's a cost to that. So then when you apply for that to get an accessibility audit done, and it's a big cost, we look at it, and if you can't get into like another church hall or whatever, you're going to pay for that rent to the church hall instead of giving someone else money for an accessibility audit that in a year you may see the benefit for. So it's not great, but that's just kind of where we're at right now. But also in the community cultures, tourism, and heritage, there's another grant that they just started to allow these accessibility audits eligible to apply for. So that's the oh man, what's it called? That gets like the planning assistant grant. So it plans, it looks at your building, your organization, and it's really made for like to extend the life of the building. So is the heat good? Is it, gonna be susceptible to climate change and things like that? But now they're adding accessibility audits to that as well.
Great, thank you. I did touch base with Julie about the question about the audits. It's specifically for municipalities, but we also do understand that some municipalities, they own part of like community centers, for example, and organizations own another half. So we're still able to go in and do the audit for them as well.
It's fantastic. Yeah, thank you. My last link was the Rick Hansen link I just sent. So search director.
Great. Thank you so much. I just want to give a huge thanks to Paul as well as Amelia. Thank you for sharing all of this valuable knowledge about upcoming grants, awards, and scholarships. I'm sure this is going to be really beneficial for a lot of the municipalities as well as organizations in the municipality. So we really appreciate your time and your commitment in this work. So this recording is going to be on YouTube as well as it's going to be on our Municipal Ideas website. So if you folks want to refer to this again, you can access it through our Municipal Ideas website. Great. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.